Hello, dear friends, again. So we gathered together today to participate in our celebration. I invite you to celebrate our publishing and giving birth all together to our first edition of the Soul of the City book. You can see it at my ground. Today's meeting is mostly our warm conversation about our experiences, about our opinions, our feelings about this first baby, which came to the world with our joint efforts. And it's a great opportunity for us to share our ideas on what worked well, what could be done better next time, what are our plans, and how we feel about it. So that's the most important sort of task for us for today, and a great opportunity to share. And again, it's a great pleasure to see you all again. And Alexander, I return the
I
baton.
really think Paul should go first because he's put together this book in such big ways. Paul, I would love you to be the first one to go.
All right. Well, Marina did all the hard work in terms of getting interviews done and getting it all sorted out. And I had all the graft of just putting it into the book. Um, it's still a kind of a tentative format. I mean, we need to discuss whether we're going to carry on like this. But it was something done kind of quickly. It follows from the formats I use in my Open Hub books. And so it was quite quick and easy to do from that point of view. Um, and we had a few little quick things like which English would we use? In the end, I think we used mainly UK English, but we'll see. But anyhow, it was great fun, and I was inspired by Marina and all of you just to sort of help as much as I could and get it out.
Thank you. Alexander?
All right. Okay. Well, the men are going first. Um, I think this is a fantastic initiative. It's more than just stories from different people living in different cities. I think it's this idea of the soul of the city as it's subtitled. I think that really is what we're bringing together here, and this opportunity for people to be seen in the essence of our being, and then to find echo in each other's being. Because what comes out for me in this book is that there's so many different ways of humaning, and they come out in these different stories in these different places. But when it's all done in a thriving way of connecting with this place, these cities where so much happens, where people are so in dense connections, and then how do we connect with life in these places that are often filled with stone and brick and concrete, and how do we bring it alive? And the ways we do that in different cities, that's what the book does. It shows how do we do that in different cities around the world. So for me, it's very enlivening and very well, inspirational to be part of this. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Paddy, maybe you will say a couple of words, and then Pina Maya, please.
Sure. Thank you, Marina. Um, if your energy around this work is part of the inspiration and the combination of having a Paul put it together and a Pina Maya and all of us, it it represents the living part of what we represent, because I'm looking at us all here with all these threads into the few cities or few places that we represent. And feeling our own souls often connect. I know that the main theme out of the book was this sense and this need for connection. And part of, I think, this community or the facilitation of what is happening into beautiful renditions of the stories that we all can feel in our hearts and in our soul, um, just help the connection. It really does help the connection. So that livingness that you spoke of, Alexander, is there, that aliveness. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think that my, let's say, initial motivation came definitely from Marina and how she presented the whole project to me, and just seeing how inspired she was. It was impossible not to be part of this story. But then just diving deeper into it, and I mean, participating in my interview and then also hearing some of the others, it really helped me to see the, let's say, environment that we live in with different eyes, connect to it in a way that I never thought of, thought of before, even for my own city. And I live here, since my birth. But just doing the interview, reading the questions, and thinking about the answers really gave me a much deeper understanding of the place, and also my understanding and connection to it. And that was the motivation then behind everything else, and just really wanting to see how this develops, and what will be born out of everything that already is, which is already amazing. But yeah, really, really inspired to see where this will lead us, and what will be created among everyone who will participate in one way or another. So that.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. Thank you. And maybe I would like to add about the idea, the very idea of how it was conceived. So what was the rationale behind this approach? So first of all, speaking about the integral approach to the territorial or urban development, we had held many discussions that usually cities are perceived as concrete, bricks, metal, glass, maybe a little bit greenery, some parks nearby, but that's all. And that's only all the tangible things, or it's some active things, some urban planning, some initiatives which are coming into place. But at the same time, as any living being, and we all strongly believe that each city is a living being, is a big ecosystem, which includes not only people, but also non-human beings, natural environment, land, which is also alive, which breathes, which gives life. And this living ecosystem, it always has not only tangible external aspects of development, it also has its internal core. And this internal core, we decided to name it soul of the place, soul of the land, soul of the city or a town or a village. And we feel that it's not only something spiritual, because it has this aspect for sure, but also it's something which is deeply rooted in culture, in history, in local traditions, in the perception of people who live on this territory, their way of thinking, the way of decision making, the way of making judgments. And all these intangible things, they influence a lot urban development, what is going on, how the initiatives are perceived, and how they are brought into life. And in this case, it's so important to reconnect to this soul in order to understand what would work, what would not work, and why, and what could be done in order to speak with people and with the place in the same language, not impose, not incorporate something alien, something which is not belong to which doesn't belong to this place, but mostly connect to what is inherent, to what is very important and profoundly valuable for this land, for people who are living there, and of course for the whole environment, because we are speaking about the respect and care for any living beings and all the living systems which are live in this ecosystem. So that this is how this idea of the soul of the city came. And after that, we decided that once we are speaking about such warm, such emotional, such sacred things, this cannot be measured by some rational academic, some specific tools. This should be collected through stories, through lived experiences, through feelings, through emotions. And this is how we came to the idea of not even interviewing people, but creating the space of sharing this warmth and these ideas and these feelings. And we created the whole huge set of questions, 52 preliminary questions which could be addressed. And we, following the rules of the participatory action research, we suggested people, invited people from different places and from different countries to look at these questions, to get inspired by these questions, to pick up those of them which are interested, in which they are interested most, and then just to create the flow, to create the space where something is emerging without any scheduled or planned sequence. So let it be, and let something give birth to something which can just emerge throughout this conversation. And as Pina Maya mentioned, with her in particular and with many other interviewees, we didn't follow the questions which we picked up before, but it something started speaking through us, something more important, something more big, more sacred. And we hope that this was very voice of the place about which we were speaking. That's how those stories were collected. So in this case, after collecting the stories, with the help of Paul, we started shaping and creating it in something tangible. So these beautiful stories, these beautiful images, these beautiful expressions of our hearts and souls were reflected not only in text, not only in the design, but also in photos, which we collected both from the people who participated in the interviews, but also sharing some pictures which belong to us. And in this case, I would like to ask Paul to share more about the pictures, the idea of how it would look like, and what it was for you, first of all, to work with all this great scope of ideas and stories and images. So please share some of your experience about this as well.
Well, I mean, there were some great photographs. There were some ones we struggled with. We were a bit grainy, but we managed to sort of sort those out a bit. But the variety, I think, of both, because I mean, we went from sort of big cities to almost villages in the book, and the variety of, in a sense, the variety of souls. I mean, there's not a soul of a city. There are a variety of souls, and I think different peoples would detect different souls in the same city. Even I know I do with my family. We see different souls altogether, but it is important that we always nurture it, because I've been writing doing an analysis of Mark Anderson's venture capitalist view of the cities of the future, and it's an utter nightmare, because of course there'll be no soul, because it's all designed by venture capitalists. And I'll just read to you what it said. Anderson builds cities that, like apps, fast, ship fast, iterate, disrupt, but soul can't be disrupted. It whispers that only those who can stop engineering will hear it. And I think that's what we've got to realize, is the soul, in a sense, the older the city, the bigger the soul, because it's got all those generations, all those things that have happened in there. And I found it very interesting, because we've got things like Broome, which is more scenery and a very ordinary plain city, but it's, the soul is there, the soul of the land. And then you get the bigger cities, and then it's really the city. So it's a great variety of things, and I think our idea with the book at this stage was to sort of carry on from the Urbanheim idea of having 50% graphics or pictures and 50% text, because we find that the more text there is, the more people only read little bits of it. But if you can see a text and you look at the picture and you think, well, I'll read a bit more, and it kind of livens it up a bit. And we took the easy path, which was just to sort of divide the page in two, which I tend to do anyhow. But I think it reflects it quite well, because as you read, hopefully we can try and match pictures, but there's not always the case, because it depends on what pictures we get. But it was a lovely job to try and do. I mean, a lot of struggle of getting it to look right and getting it to fit on the page right, because we're only using simple Word and PowerPoint. We're not using any publishing software at the moment at all. So, but we got there, I think. I think everybody should be quite pleased with what they've done.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, it was, I mentioned that we decided to look for to listen to the soul first of all. It's not only, again, to find some solutions or some keys to these souls, but it was mostly sitting humbly and listening, and with pictures maybe, and watching at what these living being, what these living ecosystems can tell us. And the more careful you listen, the more you receive this wisdom, and sometimes even this wisdom in being silent for a while during the interview, and to feel, not maybe even being capable to articulate what you are feeling, but it gave a huge space for reflection and for rediscovering maybe humanity for myself, because this work gave me lots of learning about different perceptions, about different values, about even understanding how privileged most of European people are, because they haven't experienced their problems with the colonization, with suppressing indigenous culture. They didn't experience being conquered or being somehow neglected or suppressed. And even nowadays, then maybe we can say that Canadian society is much more, for example, prosperous than, for example, Russian society. But at the same time, when we understand what are the feelings, what are the challenges that, for example, indigenous people can experience even now in their prosperous country, you can understand that not only everything is connected to their GDP or maybe some political rights, it mostly can be inherited in their suppressed identity, in not being able to express and fully articulate what are the core culture of your ancestors and what is your heritage. So it's so important to give voice to different cultures, to different peoples, to different worldviews, in order not to be arrogant. So in this case, maybe Paddy, would you please add something about your contribution and your work, because you work a lot with the indigenous people and with this restoration of rights of people who were suppressed, who were not heard, giving space to people, to communities which are marginalized. So what it was for you, because you provided and contributed an absolutely powerful piece from your part. So please, maybe could you share a little bit about your feelings and about your ideas, which you shared in the book, please?
Thank you, Marina. And I'm very aware when I speak, I'm speaking with feet standing in both spaces, not from my birth. My birth is third, fourth generation South African. But obviously I have an Irish background, and well, not obviously about that, but I have an Irish background, which I think I'm interested in that because they have experienced oppression. And it's very interesting working here because we've all been colonized. No matter what color, we have been colonized into a particular way of thinking, of mind as the superior architect. And I use the word architect very meaningfully because if we look at who's in the room here, there's Paul, who is his grounding was in architecture, and Alexander, yours in, I don't know what your basis was, but in the systems thinking, and how that has evolved into becoming more than its expression of itself. It's not just a building, it's not just a system frame. It is how do we give life to the people? So there is a lot of work that's going on at many levels in our country where we have to progress in a particular way to keep up with the Western world, and at the same time trying to honor the indigenous narratives, the indigenous wisdoms, the connection with the soil, and not the soil or the land through materialism, but the soil and the soul and the sand and the land through its connection that we are custodians of this breathing, wonderful planet rather than this possession. So the capitalist, I'd speak more of the capitalist view, how it has really disrupted the soul. And I'm not against capitalism. I'm not against healthy capitalism, which can hold the dilemmas and the disruptions and the nuances of all of that. But there's something more, and what struck me, Pina Maya, the Violetta was speaking yesterday, of that limited resource that we have in the center. And part of the work of the community here is to go back and I'm certainly not the one to take them there, but I'm acting as a voice or a bridge of invitation to keep connecting with it because I've got my own to connect with. And I want to belong. I want to be connected into this territory, this land, this world. It's important for me. Otherwise, I feel disconnected. So when we talk of indigenous, I'm interested in, I think we must be careful of the talk of that because there are really very few totally indigenous people left. Well, what are we talking about when we say indigenous? We start to claim, and then that claiming back of our roots becomes fierce, and it can go into war. And how do we claim back our roots by the honoring of something else that was there, that was on, in the essence, as you speak about that. So it's wildly complex here, and trying to live in an economy, building an African economy and an African monetary system that is more based on, and I'm not sure how idealized it is or how real it is, on a centralized capital that is around Africa and not dependent on the dollar for our survival is a huge thing. And that strips something from us when we are working with. So I think, sure, Marina, that's a big question. So I'm learning. I learn all the time from the people who feel close to that part. And there are a lot of us who are doing the work with their own people and us being participants of and witnessing what it is that journey means for the people who were here before white people came. And I also feel that there's a deeper question, not of my whiteness, but of a soul that's landed here, which I am part of.
Thank you. so deep and so powerful. And we had the conversation with Alexander, who said that we all are indigenous to some extent. So Alexander, would you please share your idea on this? Please share it with everyone, and then maybe give some words about your interview, because we discussed this very interesting notion of having roots and being the grass which sort of covers all the earth. So 2 questions to you. First of all, about the being indigenous, and second is about your own experience, please.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's not a contrast, but it's a both and. In a way, it's a contrast then, but really connects, I think, with what Paddy, you were saying as well. In a certain way, we are all indigenous. To say, yeah, I'm not indigenous means, well, from what planet are you then? We're all from here, right? Basically, although I have some doubts about some politicians, but all right. Basically, though, we are from this planet. So to be able to say, this is me, this is my place, I am the voice of this place as well, and to have that be legitimate without having to feel we have to take on somebody else's identity. This is the issue when we say, oh yes, I am going to be practicing the belief systems and the ways of being of a people that isn't me, that aren't part of my roots. But one can also be adopted into, but it has to be authentic always. And I think this is the question of connection that Paddy, you were also talking about. And so to feel connected to place, to place, right? Sometimes it's harder in the city, because the cities, about these cities where I think Tokyo and several other, Dubai, have these places where you can travel to do business. And you can go into an area where when the airplane lands, you can go straight to an area that is in your time zone. So it maintains the lighting, the circadian type of rhythm of lighting and of meals that allow you to be in your time zone, even though you're in a very different time zone, someplace else. And you can have your meetings and meet with people and engage with them and not really have a kind of jet lag because you're staying in your time zone. And then you go back. This is just as horrible as what Paul was talking about, the ideas of visions of the future, where we are so disconnected then. How to do that. In other ways, we can say, oh, I'm connected. So interesting, our language. We'll say, okay, let's connect to the internet. Okay. And then I'm connected. Are you connected? And then we check our devices. And as we check our devices, we disconnect from nature, from each other. We are connected, but disconnected. So all of this challenge in the world we live in now, particularly, it comes together with these different natures that Violetta would always talk about in terms of the different natures of our being, the constructed nature, the technological nature, the human nature, and they come together in the city so powerfully. And what does it mean then to be connected? Because I think it's something we all yearn for. The opposite of connected is being disconnected. And that's being isolated, being not just alone, but lonely, which is different than being alone, and being not included. This is where what life passes by. So how are we connected with these flows? When I was in, then I'll get to your second question in just a moment. When I was in, when I visited Australia, I think it was the first time, it was a number of years ago, it was the first time I heard anyone begin a story or a presentation, formal or informal, by saying that they want to give thanks to the land that they are standing on and to acknowledge the beings that were here before this built environment was, and to give thanks to the peoples who were here before, but not just the peoples, it's also the land. And in so many places, the land speaks us. It should. How does that do so in the city? Because it comes through in a very, especially if we stay in our time zone when we travel someplace else, we're not being spoken by the place at all. At all. We're not listening. We're not connected. So for me, as a bridge to the question of the section on Buenos Aires that I contributed, the question of what is alive, I think that's for me in the soul of the city. In this book, it comes out, and this is the question that is thriving for me as a question: what is alive in the city? In when we see each other, when we see others. Again, as you were saying, Marina, there's glass and concrete and metal, but what is alive and vibrant? And then if we can identify what is alive, the soul of the cities, right, in its different ways, Paul was saying, with all the different sizes of the cities, from villages to metropolis, what can we nourish to make sure it's more alive, right? What can we nourish if we can identify what is alive? And in doing so, then the last for me question is then what nourishes us when we're in the cities? This is part of that. What is it that will nourish us? In the chapter on Buenos Aires, there's a section where we talk about buen vivir, which is a approach in much of Latin America, much of South America in particular. And it's interesting because it goes from across many different regional cultures. And it's an expression of not just the good life, because buen vivir means good life, if you want to put it that way, living well. But it's not the hedonistic living well. It is what is truly thriving in life that connects us to the living pulse of our being. And buen vivir means nourishment. What is it that nourishes us and that we are nourished by? And that guess that was inspiring my question here, because this is key also in all of South America. In Argentina, we have mate. I brought my mate because it's the mate culture. So I wanted to share my mate. Salud. Mm. Mm. It was getting a little cold. But so we have the mate and we pour it from our thermos into here and consume everything in here. And the mate, as you can see here, is this. This is the mate. It's the gourd. The gourd is the mate. It's not the stuff inside. The stuff inside is called yerba, which translates so poetically into grass, or just herbs. So it's and it really is just it has to be toasted in certain ways and dried, and there are different, people who are very faithful to certain types of the yerba, but it's the gourd traditionally that has given it its shape, its flavor, its holding, and then the idea of this being a communal drink. It is shared and passed around, and I think this is something I brought out in that section as well. Imagine if we brought the mate tradition of sharing the mate, passing it around with everyone drinking and sharing from the bombilla, which is this metal straw, right? And there's a lot of mate culture, so you don't first of all take and then wipe off the straw. No, this is sharing, and if you are sick, you shouldn't participate, but that's okay. And in families, it doesn't matter because we'll all have it. But otherwise, you share. You don't stir it. You don't move this thing. Oh my gosh, I didn't learn it at the beginning. I'm like, you don't say thank you. When you say thank you, it means I'm done. That's what it means. So you just pass it as part of the conversation. You don't make a show of it at all. You don't even comment on it. You just reach it, grab it, and take it, and then you pass it back. And then there's always a person who serves and passes it around. Imagine if we did this in the United Nations. I just the basis of trusts and of community. We're communing in this way. It would change things. There are things that we can do from each of our traditions in our places that I think would weave us more powerfully together, identifying those and bringing them into play. And the last thing I'll say here is, and then I'll bring it back to you, bring it into play. You may have noticed I am wearing the right? The Argentine team shirt. I prepared for this. And of course, I'm wearing a sweater on top of it, so I look like a coach. But yeah, there's a lot of pride in the things we do together, the teamwork. And at the same time, as it came out in the chapter, there are many scars from the not just the colonialization, but also the military dictatorships, which were very, very strong in this country, and then the lack of trust because then people were disappeared, um, literally, and usually young people were taken from their families. Companies were grabbed by the government. People's lives were completely made unsafe and uncertain. And that persists in the kind of mentality that people have often here, which is even though there's this kind of trust, it's a very wary trust often, unless there is the learned intimacy, the asados, the where we get together and we have this fantastic meat based. Argentina is very meat based, very carnivorous, and and have these barbecues called the asado, and everyone is together there, but not everyone is invited. And my asado is for my people. So there's interesting how intimate it is, and at the same time how much there is this legacy still of distrust. So learning to trust, that I think is a big challenge for us here in Buenos Aires. How can we create those thriving environments, cities where people can be in greater trust, in greater syntony with each other? So that's my sharing. Salud.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Alexander. And you know, we discussed with Pina Maya, so she contributed and helped us not only with the Balkan countries, but by the way, so I'm from the former post-communist country. Pina Maya and some other participants were from the former Yugoslavia, with all the heritage of slightly the same type of maybe not dictatorship, but for sure very strict, I would say, conditions of living people. And we definitely have to learn from each other how to overcome problems, how to reconnect. And in this case, my question to Pina Maya, I also have two questions for you. First of all, your experience from young people, because you as a young woman participated and sort of you gave us a perspective of youth to Ljubljana and Slovenia. You also invited an absolutely wonderful girl, Anna from Serbia. And you know that Serbia is also a country with a rather difficult situation now with all the protests which are taking place there now. And we also discussed with our colleague Kartika our visit to Cuba. And Cuba, as you know, is also a country of the communist regime and all of the rather strict conditions of life, but at the same time with a very, very unusual, I would say, for the Western perspective, sense of community and openness and welcoming. So my two questions is, first of all, the perspective of young people on participation in our Soul of the City project. And maybe you could share some of your own experience on this sense of community which we experienced in Cuba.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think I mean all the questions will be probably with many dimensions, but I think that, I mean, from the perspective of youth, and I always do put here a disclaimer that my, let's say, community or my surroundings that involve youth are young people who are, I mean, very active young people. Because many times when I talk about youth, it's I get kind of this response from maybe older people, oh, but we don't really see them like that. And but again, I do accept that let's say the majority of people that are in my community are from the scouting organization, which I think has I mean, it is an important information because these people are used to being volunteers, are used to approaching difficulties not as, oh, this is difficult, but this is a challenge. Yeah, I do think there might be a slight change in let's say the general public and to people who are in my community or my surroundings. But if I maybe go back to how I perceive, let's say, Slovenia and Ljubljana at the end of the day, also connecting with what Alexander said, is that um, here is I have like this mixed feeling because on one hand, of course, Slovenia was part of Yugoslavia, and of course there was the war for independence and all of that. But every time you speak with older people, they remember Yugoslavia with a lot of nostalgia, but in a good way. They liked it. It's always like fun stories and how great everything was. So I never really grew up with, oh, that was a kind of a bad time or we felt oppressed or anything like that. It was always pictured to me as a beautiful time in their lives. At the same time, we wanted to get away and start our new path. So it is kind of a bit of duality here in what I know about or remember about Yugoslavia, because I mean I was born after the independence. Um, so it was, yeah, at the same time a nice memory from people who lived in it, and then at the same time, this wish to get away from things that apparently were not okay. Um, and also I grew up with, yeah, a lot of memories, but not really with the, let's say, suitcase full of what happened in the past. I don't think I mean, I don't know how is it with the majority of people, but for me it's always really interesting to listen to stories and experiences of people who lived in oppressed times or are still part of that, because I mean, in a way grateful that I lived all my life without this kind of this in the back of my head. I never felt that I cannot express my true self or, live freely in my country, whether it's, in a political way or just by that my rituals, my beliefs are not accepted or anything like that. And I think that is a really big privilege to be free in this way, and not feel that, oh, something is wrong with me or I have to hide who I am because someone who is in power will does not like, the way I want to live my life. So I think that is still a huge privilege to have that freedom. Um, so yeah. Um, and and then, if I go to our Cuba experience, and connect it maybe with, let's say, my life here, I always thought that Slovenians are very I mean, family orientated people, not maybe that much community orientated, but we like each other's, and our houses are always open for everyone, and the majority of neighborhoods are, there's a community in neighborhoods. But then I visited Cuba, and I was just, it opened my mind, because that is where really the community, like the true meaning of community, can be felt, where people who don't know you, because Slovenians, if you're from somewhere abroad, we do need time to accept you, like fully accept you and consider you as part of, of our own people. But then there in Cuba, I always like to say I never felt like a tourist there because everyone accepted me the second I got in touch with them. And I was really impressed with everyone wanting to help, not knowing me being from somewhere abroad. Of course, having in my life all those things that Cubans cannot have because of the system they have here. And yet I never felt rejected, unheard, right the opposite. So yeah, for me now, when someone asks me, what is the definition of community and people being open, it's Cuba. Go there, feel it there, and because I do really think that the treasure of Cuba is in its people. So it was a nice, how to say, opposite of what I thought I knew about community to then going there and feeling it there and living in there. And yeah, it was amazing. And another thing that really stuck with me, actually two things, is that when you hear Cubans talk about Cuba, and we see it as a country, and yet they talk about it as a city of Cuba, actually, which they see the whole island, the whole country as one city, and I mean, they say it in Spanish, El Pueblo de Cuba. And it was really interesting to me how, even though it's such a big territory, they are so connected with all the land, with all the people, and everyone in Cuba is part of the same community there. Um, and yes, and what really surprised me there, and I'm so grateful for this experience, is that um, here we are a little bit used to people. Let's say my grandmother always said, if someone is too nice with you, they have a hidden meaning. They want something from you. Or at the same time, don't be too nice to people, because they will kind of um, take the most out of it, or yeah. And then, even though I don't believe in this, you have this in the back of your mind. And then I came to Cuba. And of course, I had in my, subconscious kind of those teachings. And then you get there and you see that everyone does everything with a pure heart. And it was the best kind of, slap across the face, because everyone is doing things because they want to help, because there are no hidden meanings, no hidden purposes. They just want to be good people and they just want to help. And it was amazing to me that even though they live in such harsh conditions, this pure of heart is still present and is still there, and it can be done. And it really raised my hopes that we can transfer that in all of our lives and really work with good intentions in every day, in every situation, and that working with good intentions does not make you weak, but it makes you true to your heart and just a good human being. um, so yeah, that was, I think, one of the most inspiring things I learned there, and I'm so grateful to have that experience over there.
Yeah, so let's be the nicest version of ourselves without any hidden meanings. And more stories of Cuba, of Serbia, of Slovenia, of Argentina, of South Africa, of China, of Australia, and many more you can find in the book. And to sum up, our beautiful and very inspiring conversation is coming to the end. I would like to invite you to think on and to share it with the audience, with people who will watch this video as well, what you feel and what you think would be valuable for people from this book. So how our first edition of the Soul of the City book can serve people in their places. For those people who participated in this research, for those people who maybe would decide to contribute to the next edition, who would decide to participate in our upcoming events, which will take place at the end of this year and the next year. So what might be the value and the benefits for people locally or maybe globally as well. So what would be how we can serve with this book? What would you think? What would you feel about it? Paul, I know that you have to jump out earlier, so please maybe you could start with your ideas on what might be the value.
Well, I think briefly the value would be that it would inspire other people to look at their cities and maybe the same cities, but other people's views of them. And we will slowly build a kind of a library or just a base of all these different views of different cities. And then from that, I mean, you've already, from this little book and from these few cities, from few interviews, extracted quite some interesting results. So I think as that grows and grows and grows, we'll get more results, and hopefully people will get interested, and it may inspire them to do something themselves in the cities and to sort of, make a bigger contribution to them. Who knows? But I think they're great, and I think we must try and push more and more of them out, and the hard work will continue.
Thank you, and thank you for your support and contribution of this work. Paddy, what would you say?
Yes. This allows people to have a beautiful visual as well as some written words into a scene. I'm going back to what Alexander said earlier, that we're all indigenous. So to break down these separations that we have, where we are so alien with each other, and to see the commonalities and the longing and the way forward for us to do human better and to human well together.
Beautiful, thank you. Pina Maya, maybe you would, let's slightly change the sequence. So what would you feel and think?
I think that this book gives us an opportunity to see behind the scenes of what is happening, or let's say to get to know these cities, not from internet, not from media at the end of the day, but from individuals who live there and are the representatives of those cities. And yeah, it is for me a behind the scenes which is so valuable, and it really gives you a different story from what we maybe hear in our everyday lives. Much more, let's say, unedited, much more, raw and real, and just from how people perceive it. People who live there, without having to worry if this is politically correct answer or representation of a place. And I really think this is such an important tool, to really understand the soul of the city from people, for people, and at the end of the day, for the cities itself.
Thank you. And Paddy just added that the research is not dry, it's alive. So that's echoing that Pina Maya has also said. Yeah, Paul, thank you so much. And Alexander, please, what's your view? How we can serve with this book?
Nice. Yeah. People often talk about the software and hardware and the wetware. That's the human part. Yeah. Home. What does it mean? We build our homes. We make our homes. Ram Dass uses this nice expression about life. He says, we are all just walking each other home. And so this book to me is a way of walking each other home. We get to see each other's place, but not just at the superficial level. It's the not as dry places as you say, Paddy, but as these pulsing, thriving soul of the city places. And this connects us to our common humanity, something, Pina, that you were talking about so much, with what happens in Cuba and so on, in that pueblo, our common humanity. We get to see ourselves reflected in a mirror of so many different cities in different ways. People are people. I mean, really, that's the thing. People are people. And yet, we can have both the common humanity and our unique expressions of that humanity. That's awesome. To say that we have our DNA is like 99.999% the same of all humanity. It just is. And yet we're all such different, special, unique expressions. There's no two fingerprints that are the same, no two people that are the same. So I think this is part of what the book allows us to celebrate. It's that unity in diversity. I love that framing. But again, it's unity without uniformity. It's not the monolithic unity, the kind of thing that Paul was talking about in that not so good utopian future where every city has become basically an app that we can structure our lives most efficiently, effectively, and efficaciously. So this book allows us to see, in addition to efficiency, efficacy, and effectiveness, but also the ethics, the aesthetics, and the spirit of being alive. Because cities are alive. You can say the stone but they're pulsing with life. Absolutely. So again, what is it that we can see in the different ways of that life, celebrating life? Because that's what we do. So this book is a celebration for me. It's not just the voices either reading in monotone or crying alone to some of that, but it's the voices singing. It's the voices shouting in exuberance. It's the voices that are celebrating this humaning together in the soul of the city, in all of its different rainbow colors in different places, and remembering that this soul is resting on deeper, deeper, deeper patterns, that there were places, that there was something here before the city was. There were people here, there were animals and plants here, and they have made way. So the thanks and the gratitude for that breathing in, that's still with us in certain ways in that place, because the atmosphere breathes this, and it breathes us into being. So I think this is what this book allows us, if we read it with not just let me read the words, but indulging in the deliciousness of the images and of the landscapes, right? These are escapes. They're not escaping, but they are bringing us into connection. So I think if this book can be, it should be on everyone's coffee table or mate table. Ha! What I'm saying. But yes, it's great. So thank you so much for the honor of allowing me to be a part of this as well. This is where we co-create our interbeing. Salud.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let it be the inspiration to city administrators who are not just the managers, but first of all, the custodians, the keepers, the carers of the territory. Let it be the guidance for developers to develop the territories which are conducive to life. And for media and for researchers who would learn more about and share more about the voices of these places. And let it be the support to these community leaders and to the artists and to the people from cultural organizations who would maybe create and build more beautiful gifts of humanity based on this ancestry and heritage which each place provides to us. Thank you. Thank you so much for contributing, for participating, and for sharing your own experience and for sharing your wisdom. Thank you.